when you design a scenario for something contemporary, you need to bake in facts of the current world. But as we've seen recently, the current world keeps blowing up in various parts unexpectedly.
Welcome to this week's episode of Think.Fight.Learn.Repeat, the show where experience meets insight. I'm your host, Lex Luciak. In part 2, I'll continue my discussion with Ed Farren, the co-founder of Fight Club International. In this episode, we'll talk about the challenges Ed has faced as co-founder, how he sees Fight Club fitting within the broader wargaming community, and his long-term vision for the organization. Now, as always, the views and opinions expressed in this episode are solely those of our guest and do not reflect the views of any government entity, private enterprise, or individuals outside the scope of this interview. Now let's dive straight into it with Ed. We spoke a bit about milestones, and of course we talked a little bit about frictions within Fight Club or within any organization. So every organization hits obstacles along the way. For you, what have been some of the biggest challenges within Fight Club?
Ooh. Remaining with a positive outlook. I would say managing the growing enterprise is difficult. And when you start, you have this vision and you're thinking about all the activities you're going to do. And you don't think about the boring stuff like we're going to need to manage applications via a website. We're going to need to pay for a website. We're going to need to build a website. We're going to need to think about curating content like this. We're going to need to think about doing newsletters. We're going to need to think about how often we message people, how we have a reward-based incentive scheme, and all these things have kind of like been built brick by brick by brick. There's often a bit of a joke within the internal leadership, like we probably do the least gaming out of anyone in Fight Club because we have to do all the management and administration to enable others to game, and it's a bit type-free fun where you need to sort of put your dad hat on and be like, I'm happy because the kids are having fun, not that I'm having fun per se. So there is that level of maturity required. I think another friction and sort of obstacle would be confusion with people of what this is. Some people think that it's going to come in and train their unit for free, and other people might think that it's something that you just do in your own time and it doesn't come into the workplace. I remember once having a conversation with a lieutenant colonel who just couldn't wrap his head around what we were. He wanted to know like where our physical address was, which organization in the British Army we worked for, if we were a platoon or a company in size, and he just couldn't get this idea that we were a network of individuals across many countries who were just interested in gaming. So that's been an obstacle. Internally, I would say a frustration is that we have like 2,500 members, but I would say only about 800 of them are on the Discord server, which is where we do most of our day-to-day management. And then within that, you probably only have at any one time 80 active users. So it is very much a dilution of that mass, which is all great for the people who actually consistently show up and do things like you, Lex, who came through and just offered to help and lead a chapter and then run something for the whole of the organization. So getting more people to just step forward and do something. And I don't really care what it is. Like it doesn't have to be high end, super current or contemporary or whatever. Just do some wargaming, just do some gaming, talk about it, discuss it, whatever. I don't mind. Just step forward, because I think a lot of people have joined and then not necessarily followed that up with then, so what, do something. And then my final frustration would be that as the organization interacts with external organizations, there's normally huge amounts of enthusiasm to cooperate and collaborate, but follow through tends to be very low. I mean, I would say as low or lower than 10%. And the military is particularly bad with this because, unfortunately, your average military professional is too busy to invest the time to gain some time back by working with Fight Club or being part of Fight Club or some level of interaction which is going to be positive for both parties. And if we do have something come off. The danger or the standard expectation is that it will happen once. We'll do all the work. They'll just turn up with a coffee 5 minutes before, and then that will be it, and it's done. Which is absolutely not what we're trying to do. We're trying to, as I say, teach someone to fish, put the power of their own destiny in their own hands, so they can realize it. So those are probably the frustrations I've had the most.
Yeah, I hear you. I find maybe too often organizations are too, it's more focused on how well we can do the process. So are we doing things, are we doing certain things right or according to spec as opposed to are we actually doing the right things? And in this case, I think you don't build up that tactical acumen or a type of PME program by just consistently focusing on the process. You need to focus on what that end state is, and because I mean, I won't go on too much of a rant here, but you meet a lot of folks through the years that they understand what needs to happen. So when it comes to wargaming, like they understand, okay, so this is what success looks like. Or if they were actually doing something in the military, this is what I need to do. But they don't necessarily understand the how to get them from that point A to that finish line. And I would say from my perspective, that's probably the biggest benefit that wargaming has had on me professionally, is it's able to flesh out the how. What are all those little steps and those little considerations along the way, as opposed to, yeah, we just got to do this. Okay, well, how are you going to do it? And I'll leave it at that. So on that note, you spoke a lot about members within the Fight Club community. Can you just give us a snapshot of like what's going on in Fight Club right now? Are there any what the current initiatives are, what projects, basically what's going on in Fight Club?
Sure. So I think off the bat, I would say that the one of the principles I've certainly tried to push with Fight Club is we should always say yes to anything once, but we might not do it twice, three times, or make it a standard thing because we have only so much bandwidth. And if that bandwidth is, let's say, for example, 5 activities at a time, and we run the same thing every week, once we've done 5 things, we're now completely saturated and we can't do anything new. So often we will do things in one year that may not repeat in another year, or that we will create a template for that other people could then use and do, but we ourselves won't do again because we've effectively proved that concept and we now want to grow and move on to the next situation. Return to it and reuse elements of it, but not just run the same thing again and again and again, which, by the way, is what a lot of contractors do to especially sell to the military is they have a one game thing that they have and they'll just convince you through the art of magic consulting that you need that game and that they're very easy for them and they'll just deliver that. And we don't want to be like that because I think it's just gonna drive everyone away. So stuff that's going on in 2026, we're just concluding the Russo-Ukraine War combat mission tournament, which you and I have been working on. And again, we've done a lot of things with combat missions. So again, one of the things I implore people is don't just look at what the game system is and think we did something with combat mission in 2025. We're doing something with the combat mission in 2026. They must be the same thing because a war game is not just the game system that you're using. It's how you've composed the problem space with players and decisions. So in this particular tournament, which we are rapidly coming to the end of, we had teams of 4 who would collaboratively plan their mission, submit those as a set of orders, and only then conduct the mission execution between themselves, sharing the files around so they could cover down against another team. So 4 brains versus 4 brains was the logic we were going for. Didn't necessarily work out like that, and that in itself is a lesson that we can bring into other things. We've also got a matrix game, as in the matrix argument gaming system, looking at grey zone operations in Europe set in 2026, using the Warpath's adjudication system. So effectively a hybrid between an analog and digital, looking to get about sort of 40 players maybe into teams on all the nations involved. An example of why this can be difficult is because when you design a scenario for something contemporary, you need to bake in facts of the current world. But as we've seen recently, the current world keeps blowing up in various parts unexpectedly, which makes the scenario design difficult because your players then enter the game with the real world scenario as opposed to the scenario that you have printed out, a month before that you had coded in and all the rest of it. So we're probably going to delay that slightly until maybe things in the Middle East have calcified a bit. We're also continuing to use a graphical user interface on top of the game system called command mod operations, whereby you can input the orders that you want to do in a layer that is low resolution and simple, and then it will lure script into the actual game system, which is a more complicated coded system, which is a real barrier to entry if you've not used command before. So again, that's a methodology which we think has real export value to people trying to organize a high fidelity war game, but don't want to confuse and boggle the players with trying to command, the Chinese and American air and naval forces at a one-to-one scale, which this is a great point about fidelity. People want fidelity until you need to input orders at a one-to-one scale for, two superpowers. And that is a challenge. And that's what good game design and good game facilitation is aiming to solve. We've also been reinvigorating the webinar series and now starting a podcast series, which you've been a significant part of. So thank you for that. And our analog games, which we have, I think, about 13 of on the website, we are going to look to start digitizing them so they are more accessible and playable for a wider audience. I don't want to get too much into that because it hasn't been formally agreed, but that's something we want to do. And we want more people to put their games through us so we can advertise them up on the website. It's not a guarantee because we have a standard to maintain, and we also want to try and we don't want to have 25 platoon attack games. We want to have a broad array of things up there, but we do need more air and maritime because, funny old thing, the land is continuing to dominate.
I think there's a pretty famous quote there from one of another past webinar participant there, Amos Fox. I think he wrote a paper there on, actually, I think it was the end of conflict realism there. His book, not his last book, but one of his books before, where he speaks to that, like, throughout, the land dominates, the land is a priority. People live on land. War happens on land. Okay, so you spoke a bit about the ongoing projects within Fight Club and how that interacts with, certain key stakeholders or the broader wargaming community. You also spoke a little bit to what's going on in terms of digitizing some of these games, as you mentioned, as part of an initiative. What role, I guess, overall within, Fight Club as an organization, where do you see Fight Club's role within the broader wargaming community?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think it's one that other wargaming organizations throw out there because they want to know if we're a competitor or an ally. And I would like us to stay very much in the ally space, especially because at the moment we do not have the resources to compete for the spaces which are established organizations have already got. So, as an example, Georgetown University Wargaming Society does a great series of games, webinars, and educational training. And we are not in competition with that, and actually have admired and shared a lot of what they've done. And for example, Sebastian Bay and I communicate regularly about game ideas and stuff and back and forth. And he is actually also a member of Fight Club International in the US chapter. The Moors wargaming group, very well established. Again, not in competition with that. We'd like more people to go and do the Moors courses. We'd like the Moors courses to not be, $2,000 as an example. And then again, I think we offer people the ability to effectively work in their wargaming apprenticeship space before they then can justify getting formally trained, probably by an employer after they've shown up with a bit of gumption and wherewithal. In terms of military wargaming organizations such as the uh, US Marine, is it the Wargame University? You know, again, an established organization with a funding line, with a clear mandate, we will not compete with that. But those organizations are also locked in by their annual objectives and their annual budget. So often, again, we have more freedom and flexibility to move around, support, learn from, and maybe inform them. So I see us really being as a sort of interlocutor between all the established organizations, and no one should be have any fear of, like, if you know, if you Lex got a left the Canadian Army and got a job with one of these established organizations, we would not ask you to leave Fight Club International. We have people in Fight Club International who work for defense consulting firms, for wargame firms, who are in various wargaming organizations. As I say, it's a broad church. The idea is not to create a seam or a divide. I think it's just a nice place where everyone can share ideas and help the next generation along, which I think is where we offer something different, because a lot of the established organizations you need to have come with credentials, you need to come with receipts. You know, so if you want to teach at the US Marine Corps Wargame University, you know, the sort of job spec probably starts with have been wargamer for 20 years. Okay. And when you tell an 18-year-old that they need to have been wargaming before they were born to have this job, it's pretty disempowering and demotivating. So I think Fight Club International offers a place for people who not sure if they want to get into wargaming full time, can start here, start learning the ropes in a safe place to discuss, where they're not going to be either professionally embarrassed or economically or financially disadvantaged. And then they can decide maybe wargaming isn't for me and I'll go and do another job. Maybe it is for me, but I need to work on it and I'll do another career for stage one and then pivot, which is pretty much the go-to method. Or they're going to go all in and try and squeeze into one of the very few entry-level jobs in wargaming, but they're going to quickly graduate from making the tea and holding the door, which is pretty much what I see, unfortunately, a lot of the 20-year-olds who get hired do, to helping proofread the rules, to brief the players, to do the data capture and all the rest of it. And at the same time, just learning from everyone else in the network. And I think that's something that we're offering that I mean, if it is out there, apologies, I haven't really seen it, and I've been looking for 20 years. But I think that is our niche.
I definitely agree with you there. Just a couple comebacks on that. Like, when I think about Fight Club and what I like the most about the organization is, for myself, like it just reminds me of a hub. It is a hub for people with a similar interest to meet. It's come as you are, do what you can. Um, but also there is that opportunity space where you're speaking to, having those receipts and that experience. Like, you can do that in Fight Club. Like, you can put, if you have an idea in your head and you have the means to do it, like the electronic means or whatever, or if you want to run something analog, you there's a high possibility that you can execute that within Fight Club, and then that's one more thing, that one more receipt that you can add to whether it be your work experience or just your becoming more familiar with wargaming itself, and understanding, what good war games look like, what war games that probably don't look so hot look like. And basically it's a big community where you can build those lessons. And that's really resonated with me, because I mean, at the end of the day, the opportunities are endless. You have a bunch of folks that have a like-minded interest, and you can put any idea up to any chapter lead or within Fight Club on the Discord server there, and folks will tell you right off the bat whether they're interested or not. And there's your litmus test right there. And then if they're interested, yeah, go for it. Moving to the next question here. All right, I think I was going to ask you about what the members can expect from Fight Club in 2026. I think you've hit the nail on the head for quite a few of the events. Is there anything more you wanted to speak to in the future short term?
Suffice to say that it's quite dynamic. An example being that a lot of chat now is about missile defense, drone defense of fixed locations. That is a great basis for, and also of escalation, lateral and vertical escalation, all great topics for games. So maybe we will pivot to maybe something like that will come up, which, when I brief on 2026 from the end of 2025 wasn't on my radar, but is now firmly in place. But as I said, that probably comes at the cost of something else we were going to do being pushed to the right.
The last question I'll ask you about, future vision, strategy, what you see success looking like, whether it's in 2026 or moving forward and beyond. At the end of the day, when you're looking back at Fight Club and you're looking at the organization as a whole and what we do and where you would like to see things to be, what do you see as, like, whether it be the future vision, what does success look like for you for Fight Club at the end of in the long term?
Yeah, and when is the long term? Is it next year or is it even further out? Yeah, I think any answer I'm going to give you is going to be wrong in a couple of years, but I'm very happy to do that because I've got as you said, humility is a key point of gaming, so I'm very happy to be proven wrong. But I do think we want to get to a point whereby, and some tangible examples might be, there is a course on an introduction to wargame course that is free, or at least very, very cheap. Well, the cost may be your membership, opportunities to practice and be trained in facilitation, which is extremely difficult and yes, gets better with experience, but you need to start somewhere and the painful first session. Having a sort of digital cloud-based platform to host a lot of games on. So instead of having to download an instance of the game to your laptop or device, you can effectively stream in a cloud system, which then also secures your statistics, your performance, and that could be used to inform your growth in certain areas. So, and again, this is all just hyperbole of like, what is that exactly, Ed? I don't really know, but it could have dimensions of decision making, understanding system change, aggressiveness, consistency. I don't know, whatever. And you can then get better as you game, as opposed to just tracking your wins and losses, which I think is not the binary data set we want to encourage because there will be someone who's learned a hell of a lot with 1,000 losses versus someone who has probably learned very little with 1,000 wins. But those data sets that would skew your opinion of them because of the way we praise success in our society, or the perception of success when that's actually not necessarily what we want. I would like for more of the work to be done by members as opposed to by the council. So the council, of which you and I are part, we can actually focus more on the up and out, on strategic opportunities, and not on organizing tactical gaming. At the moment, we kind of have to do both, and therefore we probably don't seize or manifest as many opportunities as we could. That is a shame, but also you can't have a gaming network community that doesn't have any gaming going on. Again, that's just that's just an empty shop window. So we've always got to get gaming going, and we've got to lead by example. And it is not beneath anyone to put on a game. Whether you're the director on the leadership council, a chapter lead, everyone should be able and have that that sense of leadership to come forward and put on a game so that anyone in the organization can see that anyone can do it. It's not, we need to avoid the sort of sub-elitist group that there's 10 people in Fight Club who can run a game and everyone else is just a bystander. That would be a real shame because that's everything that I've railed against for the past 40 minutes. And I think a steady source of funding in some way, shape or form, but preferably not from the government with a lot of hooks attached, like having to do a lot of consulting for them, which then eats up all of our bandwidth and robs our members of our leadership and support, would be good. And why do I want funding? Not because I like the sound of money, but because everything we want to do normally requires somebody to move from the digital sphere through a physical realm by a plane, a train, or a car to stay a number of nights to interact with other human beings, and that all costs money. And it's a real disincentive to ask a member to reach into their own pocket in 2026 with inflation, cost of living, all the rest of it, to move themselves from A to B to conduct a wargaming activity on behalf of Fight Club International. So that's why we want funding, and also to make our games high quality production and all that sort of stuff. We don't want it because we want to enrich ourselves, just compensate people for their contribution.
Well, I don't. I appreciate the answer. I don't think you wrote too many checks just now that you can't cash in the future. So I think you're pretty safe in terms of future outlook and looking back. But I mean, at the same time, like you said, the humility and maybe looking back at this podcast now, you'll be like, oh, okay, maybe I would have did that differently. It's important to have. So last question I got for you here. So above all, if listeners want to learn more or get involved with Fight Club, where should they go?
Well, this is the easiest question I've had all night, Lex. So thank you for that. Uh, if you go into Google and type Fight Club International, once you get through the film references, you will find our website, fightclubinternational.org. You go on that, it's got a plethora of information of stuff that we've done, stuff that we're doing, uh, links, and the particular link that you want is the join link, where you will be asked to input a bunch of details. You will then receive a confirmation email from us with which then grants you access to all the member areas of the website, which we are increasingly building out. And you will also be invited to join our Discord server, which is more of the day-to-day organization of the club activity. So anything long term we want to preserve will go on the website, which you will have access to as a Fight Club member. And then if you want to be involved in a game organization, conversations, and the rest of it, then Discord is the place. And then within that, you can join a particular national chapter if one exists, or if you've got the wherewithal, you can put one together if it doesn't. And that would allow you to then possibly have more in-person meetups, because you're now talking about meeting, for example, um, the Germans can get together in their various cities in Germany, as opposed to just talking to people across the web. But that is not required. If there is not a Fight Club chapter for your nation and you're listening to this, do not let that stop you from joining, because that is not a requirement to game. We would be very upset if that was turning people away. That is meant to be a bonus, a cherry on top of being inside the wider community, the international community. That's why we changed the name from UK Fight Club to FCI, because people were not joining because it said UK Fight Club. And they're like, but I'm not from the UK. So yeah, again, stop putting up walls where they don't need to be there. Tear these barriers down. We're all global citizens of the wargaming fraternity in this sense.
Awesome. Well, I got to ask you this. It's not necessarily a question, but I'll ask you this once. I will never ask it again on the podcast. I'm sure we'll be back here on numerous occasions. But Ed, I thought you weren't supposed to talk about Fight Club.
Yeah, yeah. If I had, you know what, my funding problem would be solved if I had $1 for every time I hear that remark. I think that speaks to the penetration of the cult film, and maybe Gen Z will continue to watch it and use that reference on us. But yeah, we actually wrote our own rules of Fight Club because we wanted to get away from that particular one. But in all truth, it is a problem. People feel like they can't admit that they're a wargamer because they're going to get social exclusion. Okay. And therefore the wargamers are sort of standing next to each other in the coffee queue, not knowing that they're wargamers, and probably putting down someone who is wargaming, not knowing that they are also wargamers. So that's absolutely something we need to get rid of, and we've done our best to shout loudly and often about what we're doing and what other people are doing, because the best way to encourage wargaming is to A, do it yourself, and B, highlight and amplify when other people are doing it. And first of all, they should just be doing it. Then you can worry about if they're doing it well. Then you can worry about what they're doing it for. Okay, but often people jump to the final point there and then crap all over the person because they're not doing it for their particular niche, as opposed to just, I think it's just great that they're just doing it.
That's awesome. I guess we'll wrap things up here. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the inaugural episode. I think this is actually going to get split into 2 episodes of Think, Fight, Learn, Repeat. Really appreciate you having you on here and answering that $1 million question. What is Fight Club? I know I have a little bit of a better idea of what's going on in Fight Club myself, but yeah, thanks a lot, and I will see you definitely within the next 2 days.
Thanks. It's a pleasure, and I'll see you at Connections North.
That wraps up this episode of Think, Fight, Learn, Repeat, the show where experience meets insight. A huge thank you to our guest for taking the time to share their perspective, and to you, the audience, for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. Think, Fight, Learn, Repeat is proud to be part of the Fight Club Network. You can learn more and find additional content at www.fightclubinternational.org. Until next time, thank you.